Welcome back. The new book, Killing Reagan, by Fox News host Bill O'Reilly and his co-author Martin Dugard, has raised some questions among Reagan biographers. The book is a series of episodes from Reagan's life, spanning from Hollywood to his final days. But a whole lot of people are saying, wait a minute, the book is not factually correct. For more, let's welcome in Craig Shirley, noted Reagan biographer, the author of The Last Act, The Final Years, an Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Thanks very much for your time, Craig. Now, I didn't get to see this personally because, I'm on this program. But last night, O'Reilly took on critics of his book, saying they're angry because he wrote about Reagan's struggles, and critics are completely off base with claims that he made up some of the things in that book. Your response?
Is that Mr. O'Reilly needs to go back and read his own book, J.D. It's our complaint is not that he's writing about Reagan, it's that he's writing falsehoods about Ronald Reagan. Everything personally, the time he was in the White House, thematically there's a problem with the book in that he writes that, first of all, Nancy Reagan was some kind of Lady Macbeth running the world, running the White House, which is nonsense. And B, that Reagan was early in the presidency, was addle-brained and out of it, and may have early onset Alzheimer's, again, which is contrary to the historical fact of the dozens, if not hundreds of people interacted with him for 8 years, his own letters, his own diaries, his own schedule. Everything showed an active and vital man from the time he entered office in January of 1981 to the time he left office in January of 1989. And then there's a lot of just anecdotal stuff, which is just, it's National Enquirer. And as a matter of fact, Kitty Kelly's books, which is widely, been discarded as not real, were cited as part of his source books.
Well, let me ask you this. You've laid out some of the major errors, but is there one that really sticks in your craw that you haven't mentioned thus far?
Well, he writes about a memo that was authored in early 1987 by James Cannon, who was an aide to Howard Baker, who came into the White House, as you recall, late in the Reagan administration to clean up the mess of Don Reagan. Don Reagan was extremely egocentric. He was not loyal to Reagan. He had aides who were loyal to him and not Reagan. And this memo by James Cannon said that Reagan was watching soap operas all day and that he was, up in his pajamas in the private residence and was disengaged. But the entire memo was based on vindictive comments made by Don Reagan's aides that they told Jim Cannon, and then he put it in a memo without observing Reagan himself. The memo is later recanted by James Cannon himself after he meets with Reagan, discovers that he'd been set up by Reagan's aides.
Wow.
But yes, exactly. Wow is exactly it, because we're talking about the President of the United States and the leader of the free world. We're not talking about just some corporate CEO or some book author or something like that.
And it's something to keep in mind when people see that book out. In the meantime, we want to make sure people understand, for the definitive word on Reagan in his last years, it's the book Last Act, The Final Years, an Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan, written by our good friend Craig Shirley. Craig, thanks for coming on to correct the record. Now, let's find out the way you see it via social media. First up, it's Forrest, who writes in about another viewer's comments last night, sharing concerns about the Democrats possibly rigging the election. Here's what Forrest has to say. Someone wrote in that the Democrats will cheat by registering illegals to vote for their party. I don't see how that can be done if only U.S. citizens can vote. I hope there are safeguards in place to prevent this from happening. See, Forrest, the big problem is California registering illegals to vote at the same time it's giving those illegals driver's licenses. That's a major problem in the Golden State, set to tarnish the election results. Next, we hear from Steve, who has an interesting take on illegal immigration. He writes in, the term illegal immigrant is a misnomer and certainly clouds the issue. The only way to immigrate into a foreign nation is to do it legally. Any other attempt to enter our nation is an invasion. Point well taken, Steve, because you're technically correct. Illegal immigrant has become shorthand. The more accurate, albeit politically incorrect term is illegal alien. We'd love to hear from you. Here's how you can send us your comments. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. My final comment to you is this: stay brave, stay free, stay tuned.